Hello, everybody, and welcome to Ice-Burgh To Go, your daily dose of Pittsburgh Penguins news and analysis. You can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts from. The good news is that the Pittsburgh Penguins have found even ground on the 2023-24 season, now at 6-6-0 on the year, but following an undefeated road trip out in California. The first time the Pittsburgh Penguins have done that since this three-game trip became an annual part of the schedule back in 2014-15. They got wins over the San Jose Sharks on Saturday, 10-2. Absolute butt-kicking of the Sharks on Saturday. A 2-0 victory that looked very different. They did it in a different way against the Anaheim Ducks. And then last night's victory over the Los Angeles Kings. 3-0 on the road trip, and like I mentioned, that brings them even to 6-6 on the season. And it was at a pivotal point that they were able to go out there and perform in California. It was an important road trip for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and they delivered. Let's take you back to last week. Wednesday, Thursday, right before the Pittsburgh Penguins were getting ready to get on their flight out to San Jose and start this three-game roadie. They were 3-6-0 on the season. They were in dead last place in the Eastern Conference, and the calendar had just flipped to November. A lot of people not happy with the start to the season, especially with that breath of fresh air that was Kyle Dubas and the 8 or 9 or 10 or 12, all these new players that he was able to bring in, all these new front office people that he was able to bring in. It was a new day for the Pittsburgh Penguins. But then similar issues came up, and the Penguins just couldn't catch their footing. They had just lost to the Ducks in the final seconds of a game last Monday evening, in a game where, listen, they had 2 minutes and 8 seconds left on the clock. It was a tie game. You had a 5-on-3. You expected, at the very least, to push that one into overtime, but they didn't. Mason McTavish gets a breakaway with 11 seconds left, and he deposits in the back of the net past Tristan Jarry. Fan base is not happy at this point. They had dropped 3 of 4 in their season-long 4-game homestand, the only victory being an impressive one over the Colorado Avalanche, but the other 3 games falling flat. Not only had they dropped 3 of 4 at home, but they had dropped 5 of their previous 6 games. Things were not looking good for the Penguins, and we all said, whether it was me on this show or other podcasters or other writers on their various platforms, they all said, this is very important for them to go out and perform well on this road trip in California. We all know what the schedule looks like when they come back home, which we'll talk about here in a second, but it was very important that they went out and they performed well, and not just performed well, because they had played well at points throughout the season and were still 3-6. They needed to win. Plain and simple. Well, this road trip, they went out there and they won. It wasn't easy either. It's not like they went out and they played 3 teams that are struggling. They played some pretty good teams in the Ducks on Tuesday and then the LA Kings last night. Of course, you have to exclude the San Jose Sharks because, well, they're the San Jose Sharks. Hey, they got a victory now. They beat the Philadelphia Flyers, but a 10-2 win over the Sharks where that opposing team looked rather lifeless throughout the game. But both the Ducks and Kings were riding win streaks heading into their matchups with the Penguins this week. The Ducks had an NHL-long 6-game win streak at the time that they played the Pittsburgh Penguins, and then the Kings last night entered on a 4-game win streak, and both of those teams were coming off of impressive victories over the defending Stanley Cup champion Vegas Golden Knights, who before playing those two had yet to lose a game in regulation this season. Shoot, you want to make it plain and simple? The Kings were 8-2-2 entering the game last night, and the Penguins were still able to eke out a victory in a building, mind you, that, and I've hammered this home a lot over the past couple of days, but in a building that they have not won in since 2018. So yeah, a little exercising of the demons, a little bit of milestone action. Gensel gets his 200th in San Jose. Carlson returns to San Jose. Crosby plays in his 1200th game in San Jose. So some milestones, some demons that were defeated. A little bit of revenge was sprinkled in there in Anaheim from the victory, or the defeat, I should say, the week prior. So this road trip had it all. But the most important thing it had was 3 wins for the Pittsburgh Penguins. And it sets them up in a good spot now to move forward on the season, to move towards American Thanksgiving, which is a pretty decent-sized benchmark for the NHL calendar. Because thanks to their performance, I mentioned earlier, 6-6-0 on the year, back to even. It looks so much better than it did about a week ago. They're out of the basement in the Metropolitan Division. They've jumped a couple of teams there, and it's just in time. Because once the Penguins get back on the East Coast, it's not getting any easier. And these games are important. So it's a good thing that they're starting from a better spot. 4 of the next 6 games for the Penguins are against the Metropolitan Division, a division in which the Penguins didn't play particularly well against last year. It was not a good time for the Penguins, I guess is the best way to put it. It was not a good time when they faced the Metropolitan Division. They did not perform well against their own division last year. They're going to need to do so this year. They've only played 1 game against the Metro this year, and that was that early shutout victory over the Washington Capitals in the second game of the season. So 4 of the next 6 games against the Metro. 6 of the next 10 games are against teams that made playoffs last season. That's including the Vegas Golden Knights. That's including the Carolina Hurricanes. That's including the New York Rangers. You got a couple games against Buffalo, who's a good young team who is trying to figure their own thing out, but they got a lot of talent there. The Penguins, they need to be on their P's and Q's, but fortunately for them, they're not trying to climb out of a hole. Yes, they're not exactly where they want to be in the standings, but it's looking a lot better than it had been before this road trip. So a successful road trip for the Pittsburgh Penguins. They're set up nicely, and tomorrow night they'll see if they can continue to climb their way back and make their season-long 3-game winning streak a 4-game winning streak against the Buffalo Sabres on home ice. But that's going to do it for this episode of Ice-Burgh To Go. Thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, you can find us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins or anywhere you get your podcasts from.